This just in from the United States Geological Survey, a 7.6 magnitude earthquake.
So this is a really big earthquake, and now this originally came in as an 8.0 earthquake.
Natural disasters often remind us of how vulnerable we are to the unpredictable forces of nature. On February 8, 2025, a massive earthquake struck the Caribbean, initially measured at 8.0 magnitude. The region, already familiar with seismic activity, braced for potential devastation as tsunami warnings followed. This powerful reminder of nature's fury forces us to ask, are we truly prepared for such catastrophic events, and what lessons can we learn from them to strengthen disaster response and community resilience? But what exactly happened when the earthquake struck? Let's dive into the science behind the quake to understand the raw power of nature. The earthquake. On the evening of February 8, 2025, at 6:23 p.m. Eastern Time, a powerful earthquake struck the Caribbean region, initially recorded as an 8.0 magnitude. The earthquake's epicenter was located deep beneath the Caribbean Sea, roughly 129 miles southwest of Georgetown, the capital of the Cayman Islands, and about 372 miles west of Kingston, Jamaica. This earthquake sent shockwaves throughout the region, rattling structures and creating widespread fear. It was felt in several countries, including Honduras, Jamaica, and Puerto Rico, but the epicenter was far enough from major cities that it did not cause immediate, catastrophic damage. The seismic event occurred in a geologically active zone where the North American, South American, and Caribbean tectonic plates converge. This tectonic boundary is one of the most seismically active in the world, with the plates constantly shifting, causing the release of energy in the form of earthquakes. The pressure from these tectonic movements builds over time, eventually leading to a sudden release of energy, which results in the tremors experienced during this earthquake. Such activity is not uncommon in this region, but the scale of the February 8th event was enough to spark widespread concern. Initially, the United States Geological Survey measured the quake at a magnitude of 8, a significant event by any standard. This prompted emergency agencies and local governments to activate their response protocols, even before any damage assessments could be made. The quake's strength, combined with the timing during the evening rush hour, made it particularly alarming. Many people in the affected areas, particularly in the Cayman Islands and surrounding regions, rushed to take cover, unsure of what the next few moments would bring. The immediate effects included power outages and communication disruptions, as well as reports of buildings swaying, though most of the infrastructure appeared to withstand the force. As local authorities scrambled to assess the damage, they discovered that although tremors were significant, they did not cause the widespread destruction initially feared. However, the emotional and psychological effects were profound. People had to grapple with the fear of aftershocks and potential structural damage to their homes and businesses. This fear prompted mass evacuations in some areas, as residents sought safety outdoors, away from potential collapsing buildings. In the hours following the earthquake, seismologists continued to monitor the region for aftershocks, which are common in the wake of major quakes. The USGS downgraded the quake from its initial 8.0 magnitude to 7.6 after further analysis, but the downgrade did little to ease the uncertainty. The region remained on high alert as authorities began planning for additional seismic activity. The focus now shifted to evaluating the potential for further tremors and considering the next steps for evacuation and recovery. As authorities worked to understand the full scope of the earthquake's damage, a new threat emerged that would capture everyone's attention: the possibility of a tsunami triggered by the earthquake. But what exactly are tsunamis, and how do they relate to seismic activity? Let's dive into the science behind these massive waves and explore the response to the threat. Tsunami warnings and coastal threats. Following the February 8th earthquake, the threat of a tsunami became the next major concern. Tsunamis are large ocean waves generated by the displacement of water, typically caused by seismic events such as earthquakes, volcanic eruptions, or undersea landslides. The Caribbean region, with its numerous coastal areas and islands, is particularly vulnerable to such waves. Tsunami waves can travel across vast distances at high speeds, with little warning, and their impact can be devastating to communities located along the shore. Within minutes of the earthquake, the U.S. National Tsunami Warning Center issued a tsunami advisory for several nations, including Puerto Rico, the U.S. Virgin Islands, and other Caribbean nations. The advisory was a precautionary measure to warn coastal residents of the potential danger posed by the seismic activity. The advisory indicated that there was a risk of tsunami waves, though it was uncertain how severe they would be. In the immediate aftermath, many coastal residents were urged to move to higher ground, fearing that the earthquake might have displaced enough water to create dangerous waves. Initial reports suggested that tsunami waves might reach heights of up to 1 meter in some coastal areas, which, while not large enough to cause catastrophic destruction, could still have serious consequences. The main concern was the possibility of flooding and damage to infrastructure in low-lying areas. Residents of islands such as the Cayman Islands and parts of Puerto Rico were told to avoid beaches and coastal areas until further notice, with some evacuations being carried out as a precaution. As the hours passed, local governments coordinated with emergency responders to assess the situation. Many coastal areas, particularly those with insufficient protective barriers or infrastructure to withstand waves, were put on high alert. The fact that no large tsunami waves had been recorded by this point did not mean the threat had passed. The potential for aftershocks or secondary seismic activity remained a serious concern, as these could trigger additional tsunami waves. However, as more data came in from regional monitoring stations, it became clear that the feared tsunami waves were not as severe as initially expected. By late evening, the advisory was downgraded and the tsunami warning was lifted in most areas. This led to a collective sigh of relief, though the lingering anxiety of potential aftershocks and the possibility of further waves left many residents on edge. For now, the immediate danger had passed, but the question remained: how prepared were the region's communities to handle such events, and what lessons could be learned for future preparedness? With the tsunami threat subsiding, local governments and international agencies began focusing on the immediate recovery efforts, but the question of how to best respond to such crises in the future remained. What role do governments and international organizations play in disaster recovery, and how can they improve their efforts? Government and international response. In the wake of the earthquake and subsequent tsunami warnings, swift and coordinated government and international responses were crucial to ensuring the safety and well-being of affected communities. In the Caribbean, disaster management agencies, such as the Caribbean Disaster Emergency Management Agency, and local governments across Puerto Rico, the U.S. Virgin Islands, and the Cayman Islands mobilized emergency response teams to assess damage, provide shelter, and ensure the delivery of essential services. Governments immediately activated their disaster response protocols, focusing on the safety of the public. Emergency response teams were deployed to assess infrastructure damage, conduct search and rescue operations, and help evacuate people from damaged or at-risk areas. Hospitals and healthcare facilities were on high alert, preparing for potential influxes of injured individuals and managing resources like medical supplies and personnel. At the same time, international organizations like the United Nations, the Red Cross, and other humanitarian agencies began coordinating with local authorities to provide aid. These organizations deployed teams of medical professionals, provided food and clean water, and set up temporary shelters for displaced populations. The rapid response by these organizations highlighted the importance of international cooperation in times of disaster. In addition to the immediate relief efforts, governments and organizations also began working on long-term recovery plans. While the earthquake did not cause the extensive damage initially feared, the event served as a powerful reminder of the region's vulnerability to natural disasters. Strengthening infrastructure, improving building codes, and enhancing early warning systems became key priorities. These efforts aimed to reduce the impact of future earthquakes and tsunamis, ensuring that communities would be better prepared for the next disaster. Although the international and local response was swift, one important factor remained: how could communities build resilience against future disasters? Lessons learned from previous events in the Caribbean offer valuable insights into how to prepare better for the inevitable natural crises that lie ahead. Let's take a look at the lessons learned from past earthquakes in the region and how they can inform future preparedness. Lessons from the past. The Caribbean has long been subject to devastating earthquakes and tsunamis, and each event offers valuable lessons that can help shape future preparedness strategies. One of the key takeaways from past disasters is the need for resilient infrastructure, advanced early warning systems, and robust community education. Reflecting on significant events, such as the 2010 Haiti earthquake, which claimed over 200,000 lives, highlights the critical importance of these elements in mitigating disaster impact. However, the Caribbean's history of seismic activity stretches far beyond this recent catastrophe. An earlier and equally impactful event occurred on February 8, 1843, when an earthquake struck Guadeloupe. This earthquake, registering a magnitude of 8.5, resulted in widespread destruction and loss of life, with the island's capital, Pointe-à-Pitre, being severely affected. Buildings collapsed, and infrastructure was severely damaged, leading to high casualties. The 1843 Guadeloupe earthquake serves as an early reminder of the Caribbean's vulnerability to seismic events. Even though the region lacked modern infrastructure at the time, the disaster underscored the need for buildings to be more resilient to earthquakes, a lesson that remains relevant today. Another tragic and more recent example is the 2001 earthquake in El Salvador, which devastated parts of the Caribbean region as well. This event also highlighted the need for better earthquake-resistant infrastructure. Before the quake, many buildings were constructed without consideration for seismic activity, and the result was catastrophic. The disaster resulted in thousands of casualties and left many more without shelter. Following these and other events, the 2010 earthquake in Haiti became a stark reminder of the region's vulnerabilities. When the earthquake struck near Port-au-Prince, it revealed the weaknesses in Haiti's infrastructure, especially its aging and poorly constructed buildings. With limited disaster preparedness, the lack of robust infrastructure and building codes led to the tragic loss of over 200,000 lives. This was a wake-up call for the entire Caribbean, making it clear that improved disaster preparedness and structural integrity were needed to prevent similar outcomes in the future. In the aftermath of the 2010 disaster, governments across the Caribbean and beyond began making significant strides toward improving building codes and earthquake-resistant design standards. Many countries have since adopted stricter regulations that require new buildings in earthquake-prone areas to incorporate advanced features such as reinforced steel frames, flexible foundations, and materials designed to withstand seismic forces. The emphasis on seismic-resistant construction has helped reduce the potential for similar destruction in future events. Equally important is the establishment and expansion of earthquake monitoring systems. While no technology can predict precisely when or where an earthquake will strike, advances in seismic monitoring have made it possible to detect seismic activity as it begins. For instance, the Caribbean has greatly expanded its network of seismometers and GPS systems, enabling real-time tracking of tectonic plate movements. The region has made significant progress in integrating early warning systems that can provide governments and communities with crucial information, giving them more time to respond effectively. Education and public awareness have also played a vital role in disaster preparedness. Through various programs, governments and organizations have sought to inform residents of the risks they face and teach them how to respond in the event of an earthquake or tsunami. Schools, businesses, and community centers have become key venues for disaster preparedness drills and training, helping residents to know how to act during an emergency. By educating the public on evacuation routes, safe building practices, and basic first aid, the Caribbean has empowered its communities to take control of their safety in the face of disaster. Furthermore, lessons from past earthquakes have led to an increased focus on the need for regional cooperation. The 1843 Guadeloupe earthquake and the 2010 Haiti earthquake both served as reminders that seismic events do not respect national borders. Thus, sharing information, resources, and best practices across the Caribbean has become an essential part of building collective resilience. Regional organizations, such as the Caribbean Disaster Emergency Management Agency, CDEMA, have strengthened collaboration in order to improve preparedness and response efforts across the entire region. The lessons learned from these past earthquakes have reshaped the approach to disaster preparedness in the Caribbean. Though the region will continue to face seismic threats, the steps taken to improve infrastructure, enhance monitoring systems, and foster community resilience will better equip it to handle future crises. As the Caribbean moves forward, the challenge lies in ensuring that these improvements are maintained and that the lessons of the past are passed on to future generations. The lessons learned from past disasters are crucial for improving future disaster response, but they are not the only solution. As technology advances, new tools and innovations are emerging that can help predict earthquakes with greater accuracy. Let's explore how emerging technologies are changing the landscape of disaster, preparedness, and response in the Caribbean. Emerging technologies that revolutionizing disaster response. In recent years, emerging technologies have begun to play a significant role in disaster preparedness and response, offering new tools for predicting, monitoring, and mitigating the effects of natural disasters like earthquakes and tsunamis. These advancements have the potential to revolutionize how governments, international organizations, and local communities respond to crises in the Caribbean and beyond. One such technology is earthquake early warning systems, which are rapidly gaining traction in earthquake-prone regions. These systems use a network of seismic sensors to detect initial tremors known as P waves before the more destructive shock waves, S waves, reach populated areas. With this crucial information, authorities can issue alerts seconds to minutes before the quake strikes, allowing residents time to take protective actions, such as seeking shelter or evacuating vulnerable areas. In addition to early warning systems, advancements in satellite technology have made it possible to monitor seismic activity with greater accuracy. For instance, the use of radar-based systems such as synthetic aperture radar can detect ground displacement caused by earthquakes. These satellites can provide real-time data on shifts in the Earth's crust, allowing scientists to map out the affected areas and provide a more accurate damage assessment. Such technologies help not only in tracking earthquakes, but also in understanding the long-term impact of tectonic shifts on infrastructure and communities. Another groundbreaking technology is the use of artificial intelligence, AI, and machine learning in predicting and analyzing seismic events. AI can analyze vast amounts of data collected from seismographs, satellites, and sensors to detect patterns and anomalies that might indicate the likelihood of an earthquake. While predicting earthquakes with certainty remains an impossible task, these tools can significantly improve the accuracy of forecasting, providing earlier warnings and more precise information on affected regions. Drones are also being used to aid in disaster response, particularly in search and rescue operations and damage assessment. After an earthquake, drones equipped with cameras and thermal sensors can fly into areas that may be dangerous or inaccessible to humans, providing real-time visual data to emergency responders. This ability to survey affected areas quickly and safely is a game-changer in the aftermath of a disaster. While these technologies offer promising solutions, their implementation in disaster-prone regions like the Caribbean presents both opportunities and challenges. Many smaller nations may lack the resources to implement and maintain such sophisticated systems, and there may be technical barriers to integrating these technologies across national borders. However, the international community's increasing willingness to invest in such innovations is encouraging, and many collaborative efforts are already underway to improve the region's disaster preparedness infrastructure. As technological advancements continue to evolve, one area of focus will be the role of public education in disaster preparedness. The power of technology in saving lives is undeniable, but how can communities learn to leverage these tools effectively? Public education. While technology has certainly enhanced disaster response, public education remains one of the most powerful tools for building long-term resilience. In the Caribbean, communities have learned that awareness, preparedness, and swift action are often the keys to survival in the face of natural disasters. Educating the public about what to do before, during, and after an earthquake or tsunami can significantly reduce the loss of life and help speed up recovery efforts. In the wake of the 2010 Haiti earthquake, many Caribbean countries recognize the importance of implementing disaster preparedness education at all levels. Governments, non-governmental organizations, and international partners have worked together to create educational campaigns that raise awareness about the risks of earthquakes and tsunamis, teach communities how to respond to these threats, and provide information on how to prepare homes and businesses for seismic events. One successful initiative is the inclusion of disaster preparedness into school curricula. By teaching children how to protect themselves during earthquakes, schools are ensuring that future generations grow up with the knowledge they need to act swiftly and safely in the event of a disaster. These educational programs also encourage young people to pass on what they learn to their families, creating a ripple effect of awareness throughout communities. In addition to school-based education, public service announcements and media campaigns have been vital in spreading disaster preparedness messages to adults. Television, radio, and social media platforms have been leveraged to reach large audiences, particularly in rural or isolated communities that might not have access to formal education resources. The goal is to ensure that everyone, regardless of their socioeconomic background or access to education, knows what to do if an earthquake strikes. Preparedness drills are another critical component of public education. Regularly conducting evacuation and shelter-in-place drills helps residents practice what they would do in the event of a disaster, making them more likely to react effectively when the real thing happens. In some Caribbean islands, entire communities participate in these drills, with local authorities coordinating with schools, businesses, and emergency responders to simulate a real disaster scenario. These drills not only increase awareness, but also foster a sense of unity and shared responsibility for safety. The Caribbean has also embraced community-based disaster management, where local leaders and volunteers are trained to lead preparedness efforts in their neighborhoods. These leaders are often the first responders in the aftermath of a disaster, and their knowledge of local vulnerabilities and resources makes them invaluable in the recovery process. By empowering communities with the skills and knowledge to manage disasters at the local level, the region is building a more resilient and self-sufficient population. While public education has certainly made great strides, there is still much work to be done to improve disaster resilience. One of the most critical aspects of disaster recovery is the rebuilding process, and the region must focus on how to rebuild better and smarter. Post-disaster recovery and reconstruction. In the aftermath of any major natural disaster, the rebuilding process is just as important as the initial response. The goal of post-disaster recovery is not just to restore normalcy, but to rebuild communities in ways that make them more resilient to future disasters. This process requires collaboration between governments, local communities, and international organizations, and it involves both physical reconstruction and the rebuilding of social infrastructure. One of the key challenges of post-disaster recovery in the Caribbean is the region's vulnerability to recurring natural events. With the possibility of future earthquakes, tsunamis, and hurricanes always looming, rebuilding efforts must focus on creating more durable infrastructure that can withstand future shocks. This is where lessons from past disasters, such as the 2010 Haiti earthquake and the 2017 hurricanes, have proven valuable. Reconstruction efforts in the Caribbean have increasingly focused on disaster-resistant infrastructure. This includes strengthening buildings, bridges, and roads to ensure they can better withstand seismic activity, high winds, and flooding. In some cases, entire neighborhoods have been rebuilt with new building codes that require earthquake-resistant materials and designs. The use of modern technology, like 3D modeling and simulation software, has also helped architects and engineers design more resilient structures that are tailored to the specific risks faced by each island or country. Another important aspect of rebuilding is the restoration of essential services, such as healthcare, education, and clean water. Disasters often disrupt these services, leaving communities without access to critical resources for weeks or months. Recovery efforts must focus on restoring these services as quickly as possible to minimize the long-term impact on residents' well-being. However, the rebuilding process also involves addressing the psychological impact of the disaster. Many people in the affected areas experience trauma from the destruction of their homes, the loss of loved ones, and the uncertainty of living in a disaster-prone region. Mental health support is a critical component of recovery, and efforts are being made to provide counseling, support groups, and resources for those struggling with post-traumatic stress disorder and other emotional challenges. International aid and partnerships also play a crucial role in reconstruction. In the aftermath of a disaster, countries often rely on international donors, NGOs, and development agencies to provide financial support and expertise. The Caribbean region has benefited from such partnerships, which have helped fund reconstruction efforts and provided the technical knowledge needed to rebuild more effectively. The process of rebuilding, while critical, is only one part of the equation. To truly build resilience, the region must also focus on creating sustainable systems that can withstand future disasters. Long-term strategies for resilience. As the Caribbean continues to face the challenges of natural disasters, it has become increasingly clear that the region's future resilience will be heavily influenced by sustainability and climate change strategies. Climate change has brought about more frequent and intense storms, rising sea levels, and increased flooding, all of which exacerbate the region's vulnerability to disasters. In this context, sustainability has become a central focus in efforts to enhance disaster resilience. Governments across the Caribbean have begun integrating climate change adaptation and disaster resilience into their long-term development plans. This includes investing in green infrastructure, such as coastal restoration projects that use mangroves and coral reefs to protect against storm surges and flooding. These natural buffers not only help protect coastal communities, but also provide critical ecosystems for biodiversity and fisheries. Building sustainable cities is another key aspect of resilience. Urban areas are particularly vulnerable to natural disasters, and rapid urbanization in the Caribbean has often led to unregulated development in flood-prone zones. To address this, urban planners are focusing on creating cities that are better equipped to handle extreme weather, with improved drainage systems, flood barriers, and green spaces. Sustainable building materials and energy-efficient designs are also being incorporated into new construction projects to reduce the environmental footprint of rebuilding efforts. Climate change mitigation is equally important. By reducing greenhouse gas emissions, the Caribbean can help slow the pace of climate change and lessen the long-term risks posed by rising sea levels and extreme weather events. Regional collaboration is essential in tackling these issues, as many Caribbean nations are small and lack the resources to implement large-scale environmental initiatives on their own. Working together to address climate change can create a unified front in the face of global challenges. In addition to physical sustainability, social sustainability is also crucial. Communities need to be empowered to adapt to changing conditions and participate in the decision-making processes that affect their resilience. By involving local communities in climate action and disaster planning, the Caribbean can create a culture of sustainability and shared responsibility for future generations. The future of disaster resilience in the Caribbean. Looking ahead, the future of disaster resilience in the Caribbean is increasingly shaped by the region's unique combination of vulnerability and innovation. With its geographical location along the tectonic plate boundaries and exposure to the full force of tropical storms, the Caribbean must continue to evolve its strategies for coping with natural disasters. As climate change escalates the severity and frequency of these events, building resilience has become an essential part of the region's future development. A key factor for the future of disaster resilience lies in regional collaboration. The Caribbean is made up of over 30 islands, each with its own challenges and vulnerabilities. However, many of these challenges are shared, including the threat of earthquakes, tsunamis, hurricanes, and flooding. By working together, the countries of the Caribbean can pool resources, share knowledge, and develop joint disaster response strategies that ensure a more coordinated and efficient approach. The Caribbean Disaster Emergency Management Agency already plays a pivotal role in facilitating this kind of cooperation, and its continued efforts will be critical in strengthening regional resilience. One of the most promising developments in the future of disaster resilience is the growing emphasis on community-driven solutions. While government and international agencies play crucial roles in disaster response, local communities are often the first responders in the aftermath of a disaster. Empowering communities to take charge of their own disaster preparedness and response is vital for long-term resilience. Localized strategies that reflect the unique needs, knowledge, and vulnerabilities of each community can help ensure that no one is left behind in disaster planning or recovery. In terms of infrastructure, the future of disaster resilience will focus heavily on smart cities and buildings. As technology continues to advance, the integration of smart sensors and Internet of Things devices into infrastructure will allow for real-time monitoring of seismic activity, weather patterns, and structural health. Buildings equipped with smart technology will be able to automatically adjust to changing conditions, such as locking down vulnerable areas in the event of an earthquake, or activating water pumps during heavy rainfall to prevent flooding. These innovations could drastically reduce the impact of disasters and help mitigate the loss of life and property. The region's reliance on tourism as an economic pillar also brings both opportunities and challenges. On one hand, tourism can fund resilience projects and attract international attention to the importance of disaster preparedness. On the other hand, the economic dependency on tourism makes the region particularly vulnerable to disruptions caused by natural disasters. By diversifying economies, investing in sustainable industries, and ensuring that tourism infrastructure is built to withstand the impacts of disasters, the Caribbean can create a more stable and resilient future. As the Caribbean continues to adapt and innovate, the region's journey toward greater resilience provides valuable lessons for other disaster-prone areas around the world. Building a resilient world. The global landscape of disaster risk is changing rapidly in the 21st century due to climate change and increasing natural disasters. No region is immune, but the key to resilience lies in collaboration, innovation, and shared commitment to preparedness, response, and recovery. The Caribbean offers valuable lessons, but addressing these challenges requires global cooperation. Effective disaster resilience strategies depend on sharing knowledge, resources, and coordinating cross-border responses. Organizations like the UN Office for Disaster Risk Reduction and the World Bank are already supporting resilience efforts worldwide. Integrating disaster resilience into global development is critical, as countries recognize the interconnectedness of economic, social, and environmental factors. Disaster resilience must become an integral part of sustainable development. The UN's Sustainable Development Goals provide a framework to address disaster risk, while prioritizing social equity, economic stability, and environmental sustainability. Technology also plays a crucial role in disaster resilience. Emerging tools such as satellite monitoring, AI, drones, and early warning systems are transforming preparedness and response. Ensuring these technologies are accessible to all countries, especially low- and middle-income nations, is essential for global resilience. Strong leadership at local, national, and international levels is vital. Governments, NGOs, and international bodies must work together to build political will, support policy reforms, and integrate resilience into development plans. Public education and community engagement are also critical for ensuring that individuals understand risks and can take proactive measures. Building resilience in the 21st century is a global responsibility that requires collective action, with the Caribbean's experiences offering a valuable roadmap for a safer, more resilient world. Thanks for watching. The Caribbean earthquake showed how vital disaster preparedness and resilient infrastructure are. While the immediate impact was limited, it's crucial to stay informed. Remember, being prepared can make all the difference. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more updates.